Welcome back to the Sonny Talk Spurs channel. We're about 24 hours from one of the biggest games of the season of maybe even my Tottenham lifetime. It's up there with the Champions League final because it's not just a big game for Spurs, it's a big game for Ange Postecoglou. And who better to make his Sonny Talk Spurs debut than Billy T? I mean, if you don't know who Billy T is, I don't know where you've been. He's one of the biggest Tottenham guys over on Twitter. I'll put his link in the description down below. But before we go any further, how are you doing, Billy?
Yeah, and just hearing you say that makes me the nerves kick in, man. Feels like such a big game, right? And I feel like normally when we have this kind of game, there's other things riding on as well. This is all or nothing, isn't it? Like usually we have like a league run in to go over as well. Like we might be fighting for the top 4 or top 6 still. I can't think of a game where it's just like this all in. Like this is everything, isn't it? Like, it's crazy.
That's what I mean. When I think about that infamous Champions League final and how our league form was at the same, it is quite comparable, but we'd fallen off a little bit in that season. Whereas now, I mean, seeing us in about 16th, could be 17th, could be very very low. Come the end,
because we finished 4th that season still, didn't we? Our league form like went crazy, but we still managed to finish 4th. And I think we like drew with Everton on the last day of the season, didn't we, or something like that, if I remember.
Yeah, it's just a different time. It just feels like so long ago that Tottenham was like that.
Ago, don't it, man? Long time ago.
But before we get to that Europa League game, I mean, I'll start by saying if you are new to the Sonny Talk Spurs YouTube channel, get down below, like, subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you want me to get any more people on videos. I mean, people might not want to come on and talk about Spurs when it's this negative, but I'm glad Billy has done that today. But I know it's a couple of days, Billy, since the Wolves game. I just want to get your thoughts on that because, poor performance yet again, 4-2 defeat and 4 mistakes. I mean, 2 from the same player in Vicario, Romero as well. Like, what did you make of it in general?
I thought it was embarrassing, stomaching sort of another loss, 17th loss of the season in the league, 20th loss overall, I think. And it's just a similar story. But the thing is, like, when your players are making those individual errors like that, it's so demoralizing as a fan. And I've always thought with Postecoglou, whatever's happened this season, the players have largely been on side of him. I think you could say that pretty confidently, but I don't know what's happened in this game in particular. I don't know if it's because they had the Europa League on their mind or if they've just given up believing in the philosophy, but this really felt like evidence that he just can't motivate these players at the moment. And it was sort of, there's mistakes happening time and time again. 4 individual mistakes leading to 4 different goals. It's not, I mean, we've have a history of individual goals, individual errors leading to goals at Tottenham. Everyone knows that, but I've never seen it that bad. Yeah, it was a really demoralising loss, I think.
Yeah, it was one of those ones where, and I've been saying that a lot in my last few videos about that. At least at the beginning of the season, when we were losing, there was like positive signs. There was stuff to hang your hat on and go, "Oh, that was good." Even when we were losing like 3-2 to Brighton and being 2-0 up, at least we got into a stage where we looked dominant. We were threatening in front of goal, but just the way we've unraveled the defense, the midfield, and the attack, it's just not linking up. Players struggling up and down the pitch. And I think that game showed that, Wolves wanted it more. I mean, credit to them, really good performance, some really good individual players. But yeah, I just think when you look at that result, it just is just the story of our season, conceding early yet again, mistakes from senior players. I think that's what's worrying as well. We put some senior players out in this game and still could not deliver. So,
I mean, even right? And Vicario and Romero, like Bergwall, you can understand is a young player. He's trying to probably take too much on. He's trying to sort of G the team up himself as a 19-year-old. But Romero and Vicario, 2 of our most experienced players, and such horrific errors as well. They weren't unlucky errors. They were dreadful lapses of concentration, right?
Yeah, and I think what makes me worried, and this will probably be another question on the back of this, is we're saying about. I mean, I've said it. Forget the Premier League, put it all the eggs in the Europa League basket. But a result like this must be demoralising, especially when those players who we've just mentioned will be probably starting against Frankfurt. So, what when you look at the psychology of that, how do you think it's taking a toll on this squad?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting question, which has come up a lot this season. And I've kind of answered my own hypocrisy this season because I've been sort of held to it because I've always thought, right, I'd happily take finishing 17th if we win the Europa. I've said that all the time. But this season, it's like playing out in reality, and the reality is not as good as it sounds, is it? Like, I don't think you can possibly have a successful cup campaign, even to something like the Europa League, if you're literally losing every week in the Premier League. I don't think that strategy is probably going to end up working for us. But the reality is, like, I think this season has really shown that the league is just like your bread and butter as a fan, isn't it? It's like what you sort of, it's your biggest experience, because obviously there are 38 games across it, and it's been so miserable. So, 17 losses, over half of our games we've lost. It's demoralising fans. It must be demoralising for the players. And I think when you saw Romero, who was captain at the weekend, when he went straight down the tunnel, I think that says a lot, doesn't it, really, about the morale of the team at the moment.
That was literally my next question as well, about what did you make of Romero storming down the tunnel, especially with his future up in the air? Do you just think that is that curtains for him this season?
I think so. I think so. The only thing I would say on that is I'm not 100% sure someone is going to come in and pay the money, because, he's an excellent defender on his day, World Cup winner, has incredible passing attributes, which would make him one of the best defenders in the Premier League on his day. But if you look at the last 2 seasons, he's missed a lot of games in both of those seasons. And if you're Real Madrid or you're Atletico Madrid, you're going to pay up to 50, 60 million. Is he really worth that much money if he's likely going to miss half the games a season through injury? So it wouldn't surprise me if there's a world where he might well want to leave, and we might even be open to selling him. I just can't see it. I'm not 100% sure that someone's going to stump up the money, is my only thing. But I think that was really disappointing because, he's been injured for a lot of this season. He's in the leadership group. He was captain in this game. Someone's not playing. Romero was captain. And, to be the first man down the tunnel as captain, for me, it's unforgivable.
Yeah, I agree with you there, because I think, when we bought him, we paid around 40 million for him. And I know Daniel Levy like the back of my hand now after, supporting this club for many years. He'll probably want about 80. He'll probably want a record fee from a Real Madrid or a Atletico Madrid. So it does put it into perspective, really. And then going off what you said there about league form, I think it's the fact that a lot of people in my comment section, it might be the same with people who reply to you on Twitter. They always say to me, like, what gives you the right to demand this from Tottenham? You've not won anything in 20 odd years. You're not historically one of the bigger teams, but because you've got a shiny new stadium, why do you think you deserve that? But I'd say and this will probably be a later question as well, when you see the prices that our fans pay for tickets, the season tickets, the way our club is run, that's why we demand a bit more, because we're having to fork out for it and we're just let down time and time again. So, there's not really a question there, Billy, but what do you make of the whole discourse at the moment around that?
And I think that's completely true. And I think the biggest thing in all of that is the ticket prices that we pay, incomparable with the rest of Europe. Up there with Arsenal and Fulham, I think is the very highest in the league. And the other thing for me is, the messaging from the club is that we're now an elite club. We want to be involved in the Super League and all of this stuff. We purport to acting in some ways like an elite club in terms of revenue driving and we want to be involved in the Super League and all that kind of stuff. But then, there are other things where we fail to act like an elite club in terms of our ambition or in terms of our wages. So we're at this weird sort of mix where we're trying to be an elite club, but also not trying to be an elite club. And the fans are the ones which are taking the heat for that because, we haven't won a trophy in so long. Clubs like Aston Villa and Newcastle, they have they certainly did until this season anyway, had longer trophy droughts than us, but we're the ones that take all the flack on, in social media and stuff. We're the ones that get called spoiled. We're the ones that get called entitled. And it's because our club acts like a big club, but they don't really do anything to go over the line as being a big club. They don't go out there and buy, if you want to be an elite club these days, you have to go and spend it on the quality, £100 million players like Declan Rice and stuff like that. That's what the other elite clubs are doing. They're going to spend £100 million on players or paying a player £250,000, £300,000 a week. We don't take those steps, but we sort of pretend to be an elite club without ever really taking the final steps, which is needed to make you a successful one, I think.
Yeah, and the way that we've become into that big six is, I'd say, organic. All our revenue is organic, where I guess you can salute Daniel Levy for that, whereas Chelsea, City, they've been pumped with, a franchise money, you could say, if you to give it a nickname. So it does, I can see why we get frustrated. And the fact that, my dad's generation, they actually did see success from Spurs, even if it was League Cups, FA Cups, not to discredit them, 2 Europa Leagues, UEFA Cups back in the day. So we have got the pedigree. It's just since ENIC and Joe Lewis have been at the helm, they've not really, we've not seen us go any further. We're always going to be that bridesmaid. We are just destined for mediocrity. And it's gone even worse now because I think what Daniel Levy did, his biggest mistakes was thinking that, he just never acted when we were on top. He never backed that team, the Poch team. So I think that's where a lot of frustration comes in. And a lot of these sides... Oh, go on, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just on that exact note. I'm frustrating thing out. I don't know if you've seen the quotes from Slot this week saying Liverpool are going to have a huge summer this summer. We're going to spend big. Arteta's done exactly the same, saying we're really excited about this summer. Whereas our chairman's coming out saying, we need to be really cautious about our spending. We can't spend what we don't have. There's no the ambition, the real ambition, and the clubs like Liverpool and Arsenal, we've been in those positions before, under Pochettino, and that's when we really failed to spend. We didn't spend when we were one of the best teams in the league. We didn't spend when we went unbeaten at White Hart Lane, or in a title challenge under Pochettino, and that's what really let us down. I think you're exactly right with that.
Yeah, it's just really disheartening because I think it's more like up in the air because we don't know what the future is going to be of this manager. I mean, well, we do, but the forward planning's not there. We've now got a new CEO in, and who is infamously and known for being tight with his budgets and wanting to join the Super League. So that plays into the Daniel Levy factor. So it is just a right mess. But I'll get more onto the ownership in a little bit. The main question I want to ask you here is where we are in the table, 16th. Should Tottenham actually be there? I know the results suggest we should, but this team on paper, where should it be? Is it mid-table? Should it be competing with the European spots? Have all the teams in and around us, Bournemouths and Villas, have they just done well to compete this year? It's a one-off, or do you actually still blame Postecoglou for where we are?
I think there's a few different interesting things you can say about that argument. Firstly, I think the quality of the Premier League now is so strong that if you're complacent as a big team like Man United and Tottenham are this season, you could get dragged down. And let's be honest, we are lucky that the Championship sides that came up are so poor. And any other season we'd be in a proper relegation battle. We're lucky we've just sort of skirted on the outside of one this season. West Ham have been relegated with 42 points before. I think we're quite a few off that already. So the dreadful form that we're in is a possibility of being in a relegation battle. So I definitely think where we deserve to be. I don't think where we should be though, because I think if you look across that squad, there is a lot of talent there. There's a lot of talent there. People like Kulusevski, Bergvall, who is obviously a younger talent. If you look at people like Porro, Udogi, there's Romero, Van der Ven, Vicario. These are all international players, and I think he's not getting enough out of them this season. I think another thing that you could say on Ange's favour is we have been unlucky with injuries. I know the opposite up to that is a lot of people blame Ange for those injuries, which is a debate that's been going on for all season. I'm not going to add to that anymore because we've all heard both sides of the argument all the time. But I just think that if you gave this squad to a different manager at this point, they wouldn't be in 16th position. I think it's completely unacceptable. The amount of losses that we've stomached this season, the league form is unfortunate. I just want to make it really, really clear. I was a huge Ange fan. I really bought into what he wanted to do. I love his character. I love his philosophy. I love the attacking nature of it. That's what I want my football team to be like. But this league season is, unfortunately, there's no coming back from it. It's unforgivable. You have to be sacked if you're facing this amount of losses as Tottenham Hotspur. And I think it's incredible at the moment that he's still got the job.
Yeah, I mean, on the back of that is my next question. Like, what is your stance on Ange? And you've sort of answered it there. But maybe I'll pivot it a little bit to say then, how has it gone wrong for him in the sense of, I was the same as you. I'll start with that. I was the same as you. When he came in, I thought breath of fresh air. Maybe he was a bit of the media darling. He came across really well, attacking philosophy in that first 10 games. And then potentially we've been found out. Maybe that could be the answer to this question. But, the last couple of weeks, the Chelsea year cupping, how he acts around the media in press conferences.
Yeah.
What's been the untangling of Ange Postecoglou, would you say, if you had to sum it up?
So obviously the main thing which I think has obviously undone him is the insane amount of injuries that we've had. And he said the worrying thing for me is he almost admitted himself that he got pre-season wrong and they didn't prepare for Europe enough, which I think is insane really when, we knew all summer that we were going to be in Europe and playing 2 games a week. And we didn't plan for it accordingly. So I think the main thing which is obviously unraveled is the fact that we've had a half a playing squad for most of the season. And I think as I said before, there's so many arguments about, is that Ange's fault? Is it the club's fault? They didn't back him enough. But I think what's really got to him, specifically since in 2025, if you look at sort of January onwards, is he's not handled the pressure well at all, and he's really let it get to him. He's picking fights with like fans. There's videos of him going down the tunnel, and having an argument with a fan. There's every press conference he's getting into an entanglement with a journalist or something like that. And unfortunately, when you're managing a club like Tottenham, as we all are told, we're a big six club. There's going to be a lot of media attention on you all the time. You just have to kind of rise above that kind of thing and not let it get to you. And I think it's really got to him this season, which I think is sad, because I do underline. I think he's a great man. I think I admire his philosophy and I admire his approach. I also think another thing which probably got to it, he's maybe a bit too dogmatic with it. He stuck to it a bit too much, too rigidly, because our defending over the 2 seasons that he's been here has been shocking at times. There was a period at the beginning of the season where we looked like we were maybe solid in defence and we had a lot of possession. But since then, since the injuries started creeping in, and people talk about the injuries, we've had a fit squad for about a month now, and the form has got worse, if anything. And we're getting absolutely ripped apart by teams like Wolves and Everton, and it's just unacceptable. So I think the main things that have got him are the injuries, the fact that he's not handled the pressure well, and his sort of rigidity to his philosophy. Because you can be an attacking manager, but you still have to value defence in some ways, especially in the Premier League. You can't be this all-out attacking thing for in everything that you do. Like, we don't have a midfield, we don't have any sort of defensive structure, and it's cost us time and time again.
That's what I mean. You look at that squad, and on paper, I still back it. I think if that defense could actually drop a bit deeper, turn and face, not just being running away back from goal. And even that midfield, I look at the midfield, and on paper, you think, whoever it is, Bentancur, Bergvall, Maddison, Kulusevski, whoever's in there, you think maybe not Basuma, but all those other players, you think on any other day, under any other manager, they could handle it. But the amount of times we're bypassed, I think that's where our issue is. I think the midfield is more of an issue than the defence.
Yeah, I think that's the thing for me, is we're so easy to play against. If you're an opposition manager, you would not be fearing playing us at all, because as you always say there, our midfield is so easy to bypass. We've seen it so many times this season, and including last season as well. One ball over the top, and suddenly we're 3 versus 1. We're screwed. There's no midfield structure to us. I think a strange thing is, to go on back on Ange, is everyone last season in summer and in January again has been crying out for a number 6. We've been saying it all season last season, all season this season. We haven't got one. We didn't go out and buy one. We tried to put all these sort of square pegs in round holes, and Bentancur, Basuma, Sarr, Bergvall. None of these are really a true 6, I don't think. And I just think there's no defensive structure to our midfield whatsoever, and there's no protection for those defenders. And if you look at the back four, Porro, Udogie, Romero, Van der Ven, these are all, I don't think many people argue these are not top quality defenders. There's not a quality issue. I think it's a structural issue.
Yeah, 100%. I think you look at that, it doesn't take a genius or a tactico to realise that, someone who's gonna sit, distribute, destroy, like all the basics sometimes in football. And even I think what's worrying now is we knew we were going to be defensively suspect under Ange, but the attack has dried up. That's my issue as well. The fullbacks aren't getting goal contributions. The midfield aren't, getting any goals. He doesn't trust James Maddison, which is worrying considering, he is part of that leadership team. Even Johnson, I know like people will criticize Johnson, but he can score a goal on his day. But he's dried up. Son, Solanke has looked awful since coming back from injury. He's just not even involved. I'm a big defender of Solanke because I don't think it's his fault. It's just he's not being told what to do in those positions. He always goes to the back post. He's not there. Tell, I feel sorry for him in a sense. I've criticised him, but he's been absolutely chucked in the deep end. I mean, that's a good question to chuck in there. What have you made of Tottenham's approach to put him out and face the media? I've noticed that quite a lot recently.
Yeah, and just going back on one thing you said there first, I just want to say, I think you're completely right. I think it's okay to sort of compromise defending, if you're relentlessly attacking, scoring 4 or 5 goals every day, then the issue of defense is, doesn't matter if we concede the odd goal here and there because we're smashing teams. That was sometimes the case in Postecoglou's tenure, but this season we're not that relentless attacking force that we used to be, and in fact our attacking has become woeful. We're not churning out chances after chance after chance, and now we don't have any sort of cohesion. So that if you're not attacking or not defending, then what are you as a team? And I think we've lost a lot of that identity. In terms of Tal, I'm really confused about the way that he's been used this season, because he was kind of chucked in as a striker when Solanke was injured, and probably, took a little bit of a while to set in. I think overall we probably haven't seen enough from Tal as what we were maybe hoping for. But on the other side to that is, he played a lot of games for Bayern Munich as a left winger. Son has been really struggling as of late on the left wing, like really struggling. I know I'm a huge Son fan. I think he's an absolute club legend, and I'll always be grateful for him. He's given me some of the best Spurs memories in my lifetime. This season he has struggled, and we haven't seen Tel play left wing much until we saw him play there at the weekend. He looked pretty bright, I thought. Obviously scored, not the best goal, but he still scored. But I think what Son has sort of lost this season in particular is that ability to take players on and beat players 1v1, which he used to be one of the best in the world. I think obviously with age, everyone ages at some point, and sadly we're seeing that this season. And I'm really surprised that he's not played more. And I think if you look at his sort of one of his best traits that I've seen from Tel is obviously his mentality, as you mentioned, that he's been chucked out into the press quite a lot of times. If you look before that, he was sort of fronting fans, didn't he? Went over to the away end. He's back in Ange when another fan was fighting him again. And this guy is 19 years old as well. He's obviously been at one of the very biggest clubs in the world. So I think, we can obviously learn from that kind of experience and learn from playing for a team like Bayern Munich, where they're expected to win every single game and win handsomely and compete for league titles and Champions Leagues. He's obviously got a bit of that about him. But I think the fact that this guy, this 19-year-old loanee, was sent to the media after another defeat when, the captain made errors. There were none of the leadership group there that we have. Postecoglou made a big deal about having this leadership group, Maddison, Son, and Romero, and none of them showed. Obviously, Son wasn't there at the weekend. Maddison, Romero didn't face the media. Vicario, who's obviously quite on the surface a big leader. He shouts at players a lot. Nowhere to be seen. None of the senior players are nowhere to be seen. And the fact that we've sort of sent this 19-year-old loanee out, I think is it's not the best. But I personally would be really disappointed if we didn't get the option to keep him next season, because I think it could be something we regret, because I think there's enough there to think maybe under a different manager he could, before we signed him, he's one of the brightest teenagers in world football. So I think if we let him go, I can just imagine him going somewhere like Leipzig or Chelsea or something like that and absolutely shining. So I think it'd be a huge error not to get him next season as well.
Always the Spurs way: leave and do better. That's
exactly.
the tail of the tape. Sadly, you said there under a different manager. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a little game with you. I'm going to chuck some managerial names at you who have been linked with the Tottenham job, and you're going to summarise quite quickly with them. Yes, no, and then why. So first of all, I'm going to go with Andoni Iraola.
Yes, because I like the attacking philosophy. I think it might be a good succession for Ange. So yes.
And are you worried though it could be more of the same? That's the only thing I've heard.
Yeah, I think the other thing is as well, he's had a lot of injuries at Bournemouth. I'm not sure. I don't trust the owners to learn from their mistakes. They've not done that in 25 years, so they're not going to start doing it now. And I've also seen that he's possibly just about to commit to Bournemouth as well. But of the names which I'm sure you're about to mention, he's definitely one of the ones that I feel most excited by, just because he reminds me a little bit of Pochettino as well. He's got a bit of that sort of character about him, where I think he'll really quickly bring the fans on side.
Next, Thomas Frank.
Yes, so I've completely U-turned on Thomas Frank. When we were first linked with him, I thought, there's no way I want someone like Thomas Frank managing our football club. I don't particularly like the style of football Brentford play, but then I've since sort of turned on it and thought that maybe actually a sensible manager coming in and just making sensible decisions, no frills, just improving players, tactically changing depending on which opponent you're going to get. I actually think maybe, because we're so poor at the moment and we need some unity big time, maybe Thomas Frank is the kind of player a manager that we might need.
He's also so good PR-wise, like the way he comes across. Like, we need that. We don't need a spiky manager.
And I thought that's what we were getting with Ange, but he's fighting journalists left, right, and centre at the moment, isn't he? So it's not what we were maybe sold at the beginning when he was, a media darling. He's now sort of coming for them every single week.
Yes, and now we have Marco Silva.
One word, no. My personal philosophy is anyone that's managed Hull should never be managing Tottenham, so I'll leave it at that.
And I'll leave you there with that. And just a few more here. Erdin Terzic.
So I don't know loads about him. When we were linked a couple of months ago, where I think it was in January, we started getting linked with him. There's a video of him on YouTube where he goes through one of those. I can't remember the name of the channel where they go through the tactics, and was really impressive in that. He had a historic bottle job at Borussia Dortmund, didn't he? Where he lost the league on the last day and lost the Champions League final, obviously to a decent team, but. So it could be perfect for Spurs in that regard, but apparently he's tactically flexible. But from what I believe, from doing a little bit of research, I think by the end of it he fell out with a lot of Dortmund players. So again, I think maybe someone like Thomas Frank, who's going to unify the squad and unify the fans, might be a bit more suited.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I was for Iraola, but now Frank is warming to me even more. Like I've liked him as a manager, but I thought, is he good enough for us? And I thought, and I said this on Holly's Hotspurs the other night. What we do, we need to get back to being at that mid-table level. Like, there's no point. I want to tell Tottenham fans this now. We're not getting straight back to top 4 or top 6. You know, you got to really manage our expectations now. Like when he comes in, we're not going to be like we're back. We're like If he can just improve some individuals and just because I controversially, I want to get your opinion on this, Billy. I don't think Ange has improved one player. And that sounds balmy, but even the players who have been good, like Spence, Kulusevski, I think they're just good. Like they're just, with Kulusevski, he just moved into midfield, and that was obvious. He's been crying out to do that for years.
And I think if you sort of look at people like Bergvall and Archie Gray, he only played those players because everyone else got injured. Like if we had a full squad, you wouldn't see many minutes from Bergvall and you wouldn't have seen many minutes from Archie Gray. He's already sort of thrown Archie Gray back in the bin, hasn't he? And now that Romero and Van der Ven are back, I know he played at the weekend, but obviously he's rotating there. So I think a lot of the things that have been a success story of this season, like Bergvall and Gray, are probably the only two you can spend, have been sort of happy accidents rather than sort of any sort of measure behind them, I think. So yeah, I think you're exactly right there.
Yeah, and similar to that last game, I want to play another quick one with you. I want you to pick 3 players who you think have been standouts. I know that's going to be tricky during this season. And then I want you to pick 3 players who you've been disappointed with, who have not really lived up to your expectations. So let's start with the 3 good players.
Okay, I think this will probably be unanimous across the board if you ask most Spurs fans. I think 3 names really stand out this season. And plus, I'm going to have to give a 4th name as an honourable mention. I think my first name is obviously Lucas Bergvall. Amongst what has been largely a dreadful season, the emergence of him has been absolutely, incredible to witness. I think he started off a little bit. I remember quite a few in my group chats and things. People were saying, "Oh, he needs to go out on loan." I think it was Galatasaray he played, didn't he? And had a bit of a poor game. He loves a booking, doesn't he? This guy, this guy loves a booking. But he's grown straight. And I think one of the things about this season and the horrible injuries, as I was just saying, is the fact that he's been able to play almost half a Premier League season starting week in, week out. It's huge for his development. He's been in physically, looks much better. I think we've got one of the best talents, young talents in Europe there. I think he's an incredible, incredible footballer. So that's my number 1. My number 2, Dejan Kulusevski. I think if you'd have asked everyone in January, that would be everyone's number 1 player of the season. One of the players of the Premier League of the season. He's had an incredible season. Since then, he's had a slight dip in form and he's got injured as well. But I think if you looked at that sort of November, October period, he was carrying us single-handedly, scoring goals, creating goals, carrying the team literally on his back at that time. I think it's unfortunate that he's been injured and dipped slightly in form, but my God, do we need him on Thursday? I think he could be the real game changer for us. And the third one, obviously, Jed Spence. When we signed Jed Spence, I was really, really excited because I was watching that Nottingham Forest team within the Championship and he was incredible. And since then, every single manager has tried to get rid of him or sell him. I think what is incredible about Jed Spence is Genoa, they had the option to buy him for 9.5 million and they said no. So we were so close to losing him forever. And now look at him. He's one of the, I think he's one of the best fullbacks in the league. We'll be getting an England squad soon. He can play left back, right back. I think he's been a better left back than right back this season, which I think is crazy when we bought him as a right back. And I was really disappointed to see him not in the team on Thursday, but I think he's had a huge rise this season as well. So those are my top 3. My honourable mention obviously has to go to Archie Gray, who's played in every position under the sun. I'm surprised he's not in goal. I'm surprised he wasn't in goal for the Southampton game because he's been everywhere else. And I just think the fact that he's played out of position, all for almost half a season out of position and centre back, and just taking it on the chin. And there's, he's such a great character. So I think he's an honourable mention as well. I think I'd love to see him in midfield a bit more next season because he's played loads of games for us, and maybe 2 or 3 in midfield at the best. So he's an honourable mention too.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you, spot on with all of them. And with the Jed Spence thing is interesting because I feel like he gets more caught out on that right hand side now, which is of shock. So I think that's a spot on. But who would be your bottom 3 then if you had to?
Okay, so
I mean, there's loads to pick from.
Yeah, this one's probably a bit more difficult because there's a lot to choose from. So, and I'm probably gonna have to betray one of my all-time favorite Spurs players in the process, but I will do that lovingly at the same time. So my number 1, unfortunately, is going to be Heung-Min Son. And I don't blame him. In fact, I think we've handled him really badly this season. I think it's clear his body cannot cope with 2-3 games a week anymore. He's 32 years old. I know Salah is 32 years old and playing every single game and scoring every single game, but let's be honest, Salah is a freak of nature that is going to go down as one of the best Premier League players ever, if not the best Premier League player ever. So I think you can't really make that comparison. Every player ages differently. And I think Son has just been, his form has been really, really disappointing. And I don't put it all on him because you can just tell in everything that he does, he wants to be successful. I would love nothing more than him to lift a trophy with us this season. I think that would be incredible. It's what he deserves more than anyone else that's ever played for us, I think, because he's stuck by us through all the, I think we've had probably 10 different managers since he's been here, 11 different managers, which is crazy, something like that. But his form this season has been, just really, really poor. And I think that the fact that he's way overplayed and starting too many games means, unfortunately, he has to get in there. Number 2, I'm going to have to go for Romero. Injuries again. Also, do you remember there was that period at the beginning of the season? We were actually playing quite well. But there are quite a few lapses in concentration from Romero that led to a few goals. And then he's been injured. And then, I think this sums it up really well, didn't it? That he was injured for such a length of time and then came straight back as soon as that Argentina's game was coming around, which has been another concern that Spurs have had throughout that time. So my number 2 is Romero. And number 3, I'm probably going to go with Pedro Porro, just because I thought he was excellent last season under Ange. I think the drop off from this season to last season has been pretty significant. And I was a huge fan of him last season. I thought he was a real success story last season. I think to be honest, that you could name almost any other outfield player at the moment. But the reason why I'm going for Pedro Porro is because he was so good last season. And the other reason is because I started my first 15 games in my fantasy football team week in, week out, and he wasn't returning. So I've got a grudge against him for that personal reason alone. But I think he is another player that once a new manager comes in, I think there's so many qualities to his game. We just haven't seen them this season, unfortunately.
Yeah, and even the attacking output's dried up,
that's exactly
which is quite disappointing. But what we'll do is, before I ask my penultimate question and then get on to previewing the Frankfurt game, there was another manager who came to mind actually from the other question, Oliver Glasner.
So when the articles were coming out a few weeks ago, when we first, by the way, can I just say it's crazy that we have a manager and we're going into a quarter-final of the Europa League, which we could on paper win. And there's articles every day saying, who our next manager is going to be. Like, what other club does that happen at? It just must be awful for the morale of the squad, the morale of Ange himself. It's crazy that we've allowed this sort of media circus around who our next man. Like even Ange, I think, is admitted in press conference at the moment, isn't he? He's not going to be here next season if he wins the Europa League. He was saying in the last press conference. So when we first got linked with all these new managers, I think the ones that came up were Frank, Silva, and Iraola. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, like, why isn't Glasner in that mix? Because Palace are doing really well. And since then, they've obviously got to the semi-final of the FA Cup. And they've gone on this crazy, I think they won 6 away games in a row in the Premier League, didn't they? Since then, the talks have hotted up a little bit. So I'd be really, really happy with that. Because I think he won the Europa League with Frankfurt. So he's got that sort of European pedigree as well. Frankfurt have been to sort of a probably similar sized club, if we're honest, to Tottenham. They're someone that are always getting in and around the Europa League. They're 3rd in the Bundesliga at the moment, so he knows how to handle that kind of pressure. Obviously, they're not big in terms of the media pressure that will be on to do a Tottenham manager, but it's still a pretty big club with a lot of decent players there. So I'd be absolutely delighted if he was our manager. I think he's done an incredible job at Palace. I think I was reading something like he's lost the same amount I think he's lost 14 Palace games since he's been there, and we've obviously lost 17 this season. So for a team like Crystal Palace, that's unbelievable. And I think the job that he's done with Palace is more impressive than Iraola, Frank, and Silva. So I'd be delighted with that.
Wow, that's very, very, very good pitch that, and I'm warming to it myself as well. So penultimate question, just on the ownership. What have you made, obviously, of the protests that have been going on before the games? They're obviously getting bigger. The chant, the Levy chant, the Kulusevski one is heard up and down the Premier League now. Away, you could hear it at Wolves on Sunday. And how do you see the future of Tottenham's ownership? Could you see them in one world selling up, or is it just going to be more misery for years to come?
Obviously, this is a topic close to my heart because I've worked with Change for Tottenham, and I think this season has been a real tipping point. So I personally have been ENIC and Daniel Levy out for a number of years now because I was particularly disappointed with the way that they handled the Pochettino situation, and they fumbled like a really good play, a genuine chance to win league titles there. And once they fumbled that situation, I thought there's no coming back from that road. That was as close as we're ever going to get. And since then, it's just declined so much since that Pochettino era, since going into the new stadium. I think the biggest thing for me is we were promised that this new stadium would be a game-changing stadium. The game has not changed one bit, really. We still don't, we spend a little bit more on transfer fees, but we don't spend more on wages. Our squad now is probably as bad as it's been in the last 10, 15 years. And obviously, in my life, I've never had Tottenham been in a relegation battle. And this is a new thing that we've seen this season. So normally when I was arguing with people online or even debating, I think it's good to debate these things rather than argue them and get a lot of name calling from both sides. I don't think that helps either side. So try and debate rather than argue. There was a lot of pushback from Daniel Levy out in the last few years. That he has a lot of supporters because obviously he's done a really good job in taking us to this elite club level where we make, our revenue is insane now. And you can't argue against that. But this season I think, has been a huge tipping point. And now when you get into those discussions online, there's no one fighting his corner anymore. I think this season has turned even his strongest fans. I think this season has been so disappointing and so poorly handled from an ownership perspective. That summer transfer window where we signed one first-team player and then some teenagers, going off the back of a fifth-place finish and potentially getting back into the Champions League. I think the mistakes are always there, like the ambition is something that I will question all the time. Like we don't have it in us to, and I think you said it earlier particularly well, like when we're on top, we don't have it in us to go out and spend and solidify that position. We only spend from a position of weakness. So this season has been really, really disappointing, but I think it's been the final nail in the coffin for a lot of people that were maybe sat on the fence with Levy. So our protests have been, really well supported, and the online support we've received from all kinds of places has been incredible. The media support, the media attention, and I think this season in particular, I've never seen so much media in the papers, on Sky Sports News, TalkSport, gunning for Levy. I think he's I don't think there's anyone left now that's fighting his corner. Because even Simon Jordan the other day was arguing against him, I think, wasn't he? Was talking about that. And he's someone who is generally. It's quite supportive of Levy, but even he was saying his time must be up now. I think on the flip side of that, which makes it really frustrating as a Tottenham fan, your question, do I see him selling anytime soon? The answer is simply no, because in terms of the metrics that he is interested in, the money making, the revenue, all of that stuff is going up. It's just a shame for us fans that the stuff that we care about, the on-pitch success, competing and just being a football team to be proud of, is getting worse and worse every season at this point. I think my biggest concern about Daniel Levy, he has no idea how to hire a manager. Obviously, the change for Tottenham banner, which said we have 17 different managers now. It's going to be 18, let's be honest. It's very unlikely that Ange Postecoglou is still here. And if you look at those managers, like only 2 or 3 of them have been successful. You could probably argue Pochettino, Redknapp, and maybe Ramos if you count the trophy. Even though the Ramos wasn't particularly good for the rest of it, but he did win a trophy. So that's 3 managers out of 17. That's a really poor hit rate. So I have no faith that we'll fix it in the summer. I have no faith that we'll, and I think you're exactly right with what you said just now. We're now sort of appointed managers to get us back to above mid-table again. A few years ago, when Conte was sacked, we were looking at names like Luis Enrique and Nagelsmann. Now we're looking at sort of bottom half managers to get us, and we were always thinking, weren't we, maybe this next manager might win us the league. Now we've regressed so badly, and it's, you can only really, that's why I feel sorry for any manager that comes to us. You can only really point the blame at Daniel Levy, but I think what he likes doing is sort of creating this media circus around the managers so that all the attention is on that. you know what the story is going to be in summer. It's going to be who's the next Tottenham manager. It's not going to be, Daniel Levy needs to go, because we're in this endless cycle of having 2 years of managers, not backing them, firing them 2 years later in the same place again. So I'm really, really frustrated with the ownership. I have no faith in them whatsoever to turn this football club into a successful one, because they've been here for a quarter of a century now and they haven't managed to do it. And I think the big thing for me was when we moved into the stadium, we're now generating revenue, which means we can compete financially with teams like Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, but we're not going to do it. He even said that as much in his statement. So yeah, it's a really frustrating time to be a Tottenham fan under this ownership, I think. But unfortunately, I can't see it changing anytime soon.
Yeah, I want to say, mate, well said. That was a really good speech, and I'm not going to even add anything to that because I think you're spot on, and I agree 100%. And even I've got people in my comment section going, "Why don't Spurs get Inzaghi?" And I'm like, "This literally, you're in a dreamland if you think that's going to happen." But
and I think you're exactly right. Like, we have to adjust this is the sad thing is, we now have to adjust our expectations, and we're gonna, if we got someone like Iraola, no disrespect to any of those guys, Iraola, Frank, Marco Silva. What's their best season going to look like? Was it want to be finishing 7th or 6th or something like that? We were a team that used to compete for league titles under Pochettino not that long ago. We've fallen so far under that for that.
Yeah, I mean, it sums it up at the moment where like I'm getting bantered by like Palace fans, Brentford fans who have never won anything. But then after Sunday, nothing.
Yeah.
No one hit me up, and I was like, and I know because maybe Chelsea lost and West Ham are bad as well. But I'm like, no one even banters us anymore, which is a very weird place
honestly,
to be.
the standards at our football club are bottom low at the moment. There's no accountability. In his statement, or his financial statement, which I'm sure anyone that's a Spurs fan would have seen it, but if anyone not, just look at his financial statement. There's no accountability there. There's no apology saying we're going to do everything we can to make this right in time. I mean, instead he was saying, actually, people keep asking me to spend too much, but we can't spend what we don't have. There was no apology for how bad it's been. There was no sort of thinking, right, you got other clubs that are coming out and saying, all fans would want to hear is, we've messed up really badly this season. We're gonna make sure in summer we address it, get us back on track, and we will keep spending money until we get there, because that's what you deserve as fans. We don't get any of that.
Yeah.
Instead, he almost points the finger at us and says, "You guys make sure you support the team," and we always do. So that's a frustrating thing.
Yeah, and even he was cheeky because I mean I'm not a season ticket holder personally. I've got a friend who is, and I go with him when he's got a ticket available. And now you have to. He obviously froze season ticket and ticket prices, but now you have to be a One Hotspur member and pay £40 a year. So like no one, and that's not being reported anywhere either. Like, which is a joke.
Everything they do has there's some kind of cloak and dagger involved usually. I think they treat the fan base with no contempt whatsoever. And even though they froze season ticket prices, there were some little bits here and there, which means, did they actually freeze them, or they got rid of the cup scheme and all this kind of stuff. So there's always more to the surface of Tottenham, I think, under these owners.
Yeah, right. To finally wrap this up then, as you said earlier, you wouldn't believe it, we've got a quarter-final of the Europa League literally tomorrow.
That's the crazy thing, isn't it, right? Like, there's so much noise around it that it's just almost impossible to think that we're actually in a huge game.
Yeah, so let's get your thoughts on it, Billy, then, to round it up. How do you see it going? What's your score prediction? And does Ange keep his job afterwards, whatever happens?
Okay, so thinking about Thursday that's just gone, I thought we played really well, to be honest. Probably our best performance of 2025. And I think it's really frustrating that we didn't take a lead there, because I'm really worried that might not be enough now. I think we might have probably had to take a lead there to go through in this tie. The only thing I would say is I wasn't massively impressed with Frankfurt. I didn't think they offered that much in the game. They might be different when they're at home, though. I think they're in the Bundesliga, they're the highest pressing team in the Bundesliga. They like to counter-attack. They'll probably come out a bit more at home. So I think my big worry is that we might crumble under the pressure of the atmosphere, because their fans were, very, very noisy in the away end. And at home, I'm sure they're going to be the atmosphere is going to be absolutely insane. So I'm worried that we might crumble under pressure. I just think, man for man, quality for quality, we have better players. That's a fact. We have some individual players like Heung-Min, Son, Kulusevski. These people, if they turn up and play, we can beat this team. I really strongly believe that. I'm just not sure I have the faith that we're going to do it. I think it's going to be a really close game, and I think it'll probably end up going to extra time. And I just have I'm always trying to be optimistic, and I'm always trying to be a dreamer. So I'm just going to say we're going to win 2-1 in extra time, just because I just really hope that just something happened. We just deserve it so much as a fan base, right? We've been through the absolute mud this season. We just deserve one moment of sort of, Son curling one into the top corner in extra time or something like that. God knows we deserve that kind of moment. So I'm going to pray for it. I'm not particularly confident about it. I think, we're historically really poor in Europe. We're horrific in a way. Just look at the weekend, for example, to show that. We're terrible away at the moment. And, I think there's only 2 teams in the Premier League with more away losses than us. We have more away losses than Ipswich, for example. So I'm not confident about it, but I'm a dreamer. I'm going to hope Tottenham win 2-1.
Yeah, I think we needed to get a result last week, really, especially during that 10-minute spell when we hit the post and bar a couple of times. I think they're one of the strongest counter-attacking teams in Europe, so they'll love that. My one worry is, I know you said they don't look good, but they will have a moment like they did last week where they pick us off once, and that's all you need sometimes against this Spurs side. So I think we might lose it just. I think it'll be like 1 or 2-0. And then
I think it's going to be really close either way.
I think it'll be close. And even if we get through, like Bodo Glimt look good, and Lazio, if they can turn their tie around.
I think
I wouldn't fancy United.
I think Bodo Glimt are a bit of a dark horse, aren't they? And they're I think going away to there, I think they have an AstroTurf pitch, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It'll be freezing cold. So that's the kind of place where we get through Frankfurt and have a think, right, we're in the final. We don't have to worry about Bodo Glimt. They'll probably go and beat us.
Yeah, honestly. But yeah, that's going to be. I'm really nervous about this game. I'm glad I'm going to watch it on my own in a dark room.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think if Ange loses on Thursday, he's sacked on Friday?
That's a really good question. I mean, I personally think yes. Because I think we're safe. Because even if you look at the end of the season, we haven't actually spoken about this on this video. We've still got to go Villa away. We've still got to go Anfield away. We've still got to go and play Forest. Ours. There's still tricky fixtures there.
Forest is after Thursday as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's as you said earlier. It's good there are 3 worse teams. Because that could be. I think personally, sorry to answer your question quick, I'll say I think you've got to cut ties then. You've given him the cup competitions that you wanted to give him. I wouldn't even chuck Ryan Mason in. I think he's got to go as well. I know it sounds harsh, but I think you've just got to clear out shop and bring someone external in, even if it's, I don't know if Jermaine Defoe is still involved with the under-21s or someone like that.
Just get the fans back on side, right?
Just a bit of like because I can imagine people now going to the stadium will be like, we're just going.
It'll get so toxic if we lose on Thursday as well. That
to tick a box. So that's my opinion on that, really.
Yeah, I think I'm the same as you. I think if we lose Thursday, the rest of the season is going to be so toxic. It's every single game is going to be. I dread to think what those sort of. The crowd is going to be like for those upcoming games. I think that's right in saying we have to get 2 more points to be safe from relegation. But if you look at our 6 or 7 remaining games, it's not easy to say that we're going to get 2 points. I know some people on Twitter are predicting we're going to lose all of our remaining Premier League games. I'm not quite down that bad, but all of our home games are against Forest, Palace, and Brighton. 3 pretty decent teams, and our away games, Liverpool, Villa, and West Ham, teams that we struggle against massively traditionally. So this could be a really difficult end to the season. But if we go through, then football can change so quickly, can't it? You have one big win against Frankfurt, and suddenly there's a big lift everywhere. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I'd even take playing rubbish and getting a win, a scrappy win, even though I don't know if Ange does that at all. But well, thank you very much, Billy, for joining me today.
I hope we come back. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic debut.
I can't say as a Europa League winner as well.
That'd be great. I mean, I was going to say, do you want to plug where people can find you? I'll put it in the description down below. But I mean, if people don't know who you are from Twitter, then they've been living under a rock.
Billy_T on Twitter, and just anyone that's interested and feels the same way that I feel about the ownership. Feel free to follow Change for Spurs as well. Change for Tottenham, just Change for Spurs on Twitter, because we have big plans for the rest of the season. Our next protest will be against Crystal Palace. That's in there too. But yeah, just Billy_T on Twitter as well.
Yeah, I was meant to say actually during your passionate speech, but I'll say it now. I'll be putting Billy's link and Change for Spurs in my description so people can. Right. I think it's a great thing to go to, and if you're at the games, definitely go and show your support because, if you don't do it, change will not happen. And you know, us keyboard warriors sometimes need to keep doing it in person. But yeah, thanks very much, Billy. And if you have enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, and also leave your comments of your Frankfurt predictions, as well as any other guests you want me to get on the Sunny Talk Spurs YouTube channel. And until next time, which will be a reaction to that Frankfurt game, praying for me now. I'll see you guys then. Bye.